I remember growing up here in El Paso and on weekends occasionally going across the border to run errands. In that process one day, in going from our car to the iconic Catholic church in the center of town of Juarez, I saw a little boy about my age sitting low to the ground with his dirty, calloused hand raised up, begging for pesos. As he was sitting there, I saw that he was crippled in one leg and amputated on another. As he sat on this homemade wooden cart with wheels on it so that he could propel himself along the ground, while the other kids in the neighborhood were playing. I thought a lot about that little boy. And that evening I wonder what it would take to help that little boy walk again, run again, so that he could play soccer with the kids in the neighborhood. That event 45 years ago has remained a part of who I am to this day. My senior year in high school in 1980, I made an appointment with my high school counselor so that I could kind of figure out what's the process by which you apply to college so I could major in engineering. I thought I had some skill sets that would allow me to be an engineer, and so I wanted to talk to her about it. I remember my counselor, almost as if laughing, said, "Do you know what your grades are? Do you know what you got on your SAT? Do you know your disciplinary record?" You know, while she was right to point those things out, in many ways, what I was wondering is, why couldn't we talk about why I had an interest in engineering? What assets did I think I had to be a good engineer? You know, I thought I had assets that would contribute to what engineering skill set was necessary. I mean, I often engineered trouble all through campus. You know, unfortunately, I was distracted in many ways. You know, high school just did not keep my attention. And so I did poorly. I put my energies into many other things. And while I'm not proud of many of the things that I did in high school and around the community, they were pretty creative. So growing up in a low-income home as a first-generation college student, I realized that if I was going to have any chance to go to college, it would likely be at UTEP. See, I had applied to a few universities, thinking that maybe they would see something special, but on the surface, there was nothing to see. So everywhere I applied, I got a rejection. So I said, well, I know UTEP provides access. They had provided access for my older sisters. And so I decided, let's go to UTEP. You know, unfortunately, my GPA and my SAT score framed part of who I was. It was those two numbers that said, this is your chance of being a successful college student. It predestines you. And yet, I thought I had other skills. I was highly motivated. I think I was determined, and I think I had a growth mindset. But people couldn't get past those two numbers. I remember the first day on campus coming to UTEP and being deathly afraid, I mean deathly afraid, that I was not going to be able to cut it. I remember thinking, if there's any hope that I'm going to get through the next 4 or 5 years with a degree, I better take this one semester at a time, one course at a time, 1 week at a time. Almost like eating that proverbial elephant one bite at a time. UTEP realized that I needed to be set up for success. So in the summer of 1981, the summer before my freshman year of college, UTEP had this thing called Preview of Engineering program that you qualify to be in if you're an at-risk student. And so I had all the metrics for being an at-risk student. So I was part of this summer program that was a series of courses that you kind of take with a study skills course. I haven't kept any of my undergraduate textbooks, but I have kept my study skills book. And if you could walk up here, you could see that every page is highlighted, written in, and it's tagged. This book from 38 years ago humbly reminds me of the journey I made from high school to college and into my professional career. And in fact, in one of these pages is something that I wrote with my own handwriting. It says, "Remember the reasons you go to college. It will help you study." See, I came to UTEP not just because I wanted a job, but because I wanted to be an educated person. I wanted to contribute back to society, hold a position where I could do that. So this book represents a tremendous amount of value to me. It represents a change in my thinking, a change in my habits, and this still sits in my office today. But I also realized that there was something else I was going to have to change. It wasn't just learning to study or learning different habits. I knew that I would have to make UTEP my home away from home. See, part of the issue that happened in high school is that I was really never part of a community. I was a loner, kind of doing my own thing, seeking to be destructive in many ways with the energy that I had. So when I came to UTEP, I decided I needed to identify with students that were just like me. So we could have conversations such as, what's going on in class? What do you need to learn? Talk about the events of the day, share what our passions are for the future. I remember spending 12 to 16 hours a day on campus, doing things like going to the dinner theater, going to football games, basketball games, sitting in this very theater and watching Friday night movies, all as a group together of a community, learning. That was very critical to my success. And while my parents were very supportive of my college endeavors, because of our income status, they weren't able to contribute to helping me with tuition and fees. So fortunately, through financial aid and ultimately through a 4-year scholarship, in May of 1986, I graduated with honors in mechanical engineering. There's a lot of things that I see from that change. Obviously, I was extremely motivated at UTEP to succeed. And UTEP gave me access. But that doesn't mean that hard work, determination, and sacrifice were not needed. But access really made the difference. You know, I see that today in some of my students, where if it wasn't for UTEP, they might not even be in college. Because like me, they are characterized by these two numbers. And because of that characterization, sometimes they feel that their ability to contribute to the future is limited. So I could sit here and tell you a lot about my career. I've been a professor for almost 25 years. And in that period, I've had the chance to mentor hundreds of undergraduate and graduate students towards their own professional careers. I've had the chance to establish a nonprofit organization called LIMS International, which its aim is to help the poorest of the poor amputees walk again. And in the last 15 years, through LIMS, we have helped thousands of amputees in almost 50 countries worldwide walk again. So the issue is not really about what always access has done for me. It really is what access can do for others, the ripple effect it has, like it's had in my life. So I want to tell you the story of two individuals. One, a former student of mine, and two, of a young man in Bangladesh. Raina Hale was an undergraduate student in biomedical engineering. Raina was a typical C student struggling to survive in a male-dominated major. In her sophomore year, she approached me wanting to increase her skill sets in engineering to tell me, I want to volunteer in your lab. Raina knew nothing about my research area in biomechanics. She really, on the surface, had nothing to provide. But I saw that she was determined. I saw that she was motivated. I saw that she had a global perspective. In some sense, I remembered my counselor just looking at the surface, saying I had nothing to give back. So I decided that I would let Raina have a chance to volunteer for the summer in my research lab. Over that summer, Raina learned a lot of it sometimes through failure. And over the next 2 years, Raina became my lab project manager, superb at doing undergraduate research, and very effective at presenting our research results at conferences throughout the United States. Remember, Raina was a C student, so I knew that she would probably not get into graduate programs throughout the United States. So I asked her, why don't you stay and continue to work with me in my research lab and work on your master's in engineering? Raina was the first female student at my former institution to get a master's of science in engineering. And subsequently, when I invited her to join me here at UTEP when I came here, she was the first female to get a PhD in biomedical engineering here at UTEP. Today, Raina Hale is a postdoctoral research fellow at the prestigious Mayo Clinic in Rochester, Minnesota. If it hadn't been for Raina's determination to learn where and how to apply her skill sets, she wouldn't have had that chance. In other words, it was a combination of her determination plus the ability that I gave her a chance to show me what she wanted to do that summer when she was a sophomore. Access for Raina made the difference in her being able to do what she's doing today. Nubir is another example of access. In Bangladesh, if you're poor and live in a rural part of the country, you jump on top of roofs of buses and cargo trucks to move from one place to another. And in rural parts of Bangladesh, there are one-lane roads. And these buses and these cargo trucks play chicken to see who gets out of the way first. Tragically, when Nubir was riding on the roof of one of the buses, the bus had to take a sharper turn than usual to avoid a head-on collision with a truck. As a result, Nubir was catapulted from the top of the bus, hitting the ground and other objects, severely hurting himself. To save Nubir's life, he was amputated above the knee. I met Nubir a few months after that accident when I was in Bangladesh for the first time. And Nubir was a very depressed and bitter young man. He knew that because he was poor, he would probably never be able to walk again because he could not afford a prosthetic and all the rehab and all the medical care for him to walk again. Fortunately, we were doing some work at that time with limbs in Malamgat, Bangladesh, and we asked Nubir to let us help him. And even though he was distrusting of me as an American, Nubir agreed to let us help him. So in cooperation with Christian Memorial Hospital in Malamgat, Bangladesh, to provide rehabilitation after we fitted him, Nubir once again was walking. I have visited Bangladesh several times since that first visit. And in my last visit to Bangladesh, when I first arrived, I saw Nubir running up and down the street, flagging down buses for passengers to get on. Nubir was in control of his life again, making a living, contributing back to his community. See, because what happens when you're poor and you're disabled in many of these countries, you're often discarded by your family, your friends, and your community, and relegated to beg on a corner to survive. But Nubir didn't have to do that because he had access to a prosthetic leg. Access for Nubir made the difference. So you can see that access is not just about higher education. It's also about medical care, basic human needs. And I would propose to you that we can provide access to others by fighting corruption and greed that locks out people from opportunity. Let me challenge you to think about what access really means at a deeper level. How does it fit into the way you view the world? How does it fit into your everyday life? I mean, everybody needs access. It wasn't just me as that kid who didn't have the right GPA and SAT score. Even the affluent sometimes need access to things they can't get. It is about leaving a legacy. Access has allowed me to leave a legacy with my family, my kids, but it's also allowed me to leave a legacy through many students and to many people around the world. Leave a legacy with the access you've been given, because after all, access makes a difference. Thank you.